A young man died mysteriously on the street. Will his grieving father choose to end his life in pain or devote all his strength to track down the evil enemy for revenge? He is a man who works at dawn, specializing in plowing snow in a small northern European town to clear the roads for its residents. His house is on a snow-covered mountainside, where he has a happy family of 3. This man's name is Nels Coxman. Thanks to his dedication to his snow-plowing job, he was even awarded the town's Citizen of the Year. However, such an honest and simple man is about to face a horrific event. His son is Kyle, a ground service employee at the airport. That night, as he was preparing to leave work in the break room, a man with a gun suddenly appeared. Kyle was dragged into a van by a group of hooded thugs. Tied up in the van with him was his colleague named Dante. The van sped off. Not understanding why he was captured, Kyle was forced by the gang to use a very strong drug. Taking advantage of the others being distracted, Dante opened the van door and jumped out. The van immediately stopped. A white-haired guy in the van got out and fired wildly at the fleeing Dante. Because it was dark, the white-haired guy couldn't see clearly, and in the end, Dante escaped. The next morning, the van drove into the city center. The thugs placed the unconscious Kyle on a bench. To avoid attracting attention, they even pretended to sit next to him and chat for a while before leaving him behind and driving away. In reality, this poor young man had been dead for a long time. Coxman and his wife went to the morgue and saw their son's body. The old couple was frozen in extreme grief, unable to speak. But the words of the police chief next to them struck them like a thunderbolt. He died of a drug overdose. Coxman felt something was wrong, because he knew his son had never been an addict. The death of their son created a rift in the couple's relationship. The wife blamed Coxman for not understanding their son at all. She poured all her sorrow and resentment onto him. But she herself, a mother, how well did she understand her child? Coxman said nothing. At this moment, he didn't want to explain, nor did he want to argue. He could only endure it all in silence. His heart was now like a place blown through by the cold wind on the snowy mountain, bone-chillingly frozen without a trace of warmth. In the middle of the night, he returned to the snowplow parking lot. Because there were things he didn't want to do at home, he downed a glass of strong liquor and pulled out a rifle. At this moment, he just wanted to end this tragic and hopeless life with a single shot. But just then, a sound suddenly came from the corner. A filthy, grimy man crawled out from behind a cabinet. Coxman immediately recognized this blood-covered man as Dante, his son's colleague. Dante repeatedly apologized to Coxman. Finally, he revealed the real reason for Kyle's death. It turned out that Dante himself had stolen a large bag of drugs from the gang. When the gangsters caught him, they mistook Kyle for an accomplice and captured him too. Unexpectedly, Dante ended up surviving. Coxman angrily grabbed the bastard's collar, forcing him to say who had killed his son. After getting the name and address of one of the gangsters, the fire of anger in Coxman's heart blazed. He immediately drove off. He went to a bustling bar. With the help of a security guard, he finally saw Speedo, the bastard who had given the poison to his son. Seeing Speedo about to leave, he followed. He followed Speedo into the elevator. No matter how Coxman questioned him, Speedo refused to answer. He didn't want to get involved with this old man, so he pulled out the pistol tucked in his waistband. He thought he had scared the old man, but he could never have imagined how strong the anger of a father who has lost his son could be. After a brutal fight, Coxman dragged Speedo into his car. He searched his phone. Under duress, he got the name of Speedo's boss. When he could no longer extract any more useful information from this bastard, Coxman decided to send him on his way. He was originally a gentle person, but some things can turn a gentle lamb into a bloodthirsty wolf. He finally managed to kill Speedo, but how to dispose of the body? In Northern Europe, he didn't need to worry about that problem. The population was already sparse, and there were mountains and rivers everywhere. Coxman wrapped the body in wire mesh and with a swing of his arm, threw it down a large waterfall. He returned home to find his wife sitting there alone in silence. No matter what Coxman said, she ignored him. After their son's death, the already fragile feelings of the couple had almost vanished. After midnight, Coxman went to the parking lot as usual. That night, he sawed off the barrel and stock of his Winchester Model 70 rifle, turning it into a handgun that could be concealed on his person. Afterward, he went to the wedding dress shop of Speedo's boss. The shop owner saw the old man walk in and knew he was up to no good, because wedding dress shops are usually entered only by women or young men, and this old man was constantly hiding something in his coat. The owner told Coxman to wait a moment while he finished with the female customer. The owner occasionally observed Coxman's gestures. It seemed he was a seasoned old gangster. Finally, the female customer left, leaving only the two men in the shop. Coxman hit the owner hard with the butt of his gun, causing him to spit up blood. Under the threat of violence, Coxman learned the names of the drug traffickers who transported the goods. They all belonged to a large drug trafficking gang. The owner begged Coxman not to kill him. Coxman hesitated for a moment and decided to leave. But he suddenly asked the owner a question. Who is the greatest quarterback of all time, Elway or Marino? The owner's answer was correct, but he still had to die. Because no matter what was said, Coxman was going to pull the trigger, and the method of dealing with the body was the same as before. The cold waterfall gained a little more nourishment. Coxman went to the airport. He waited for the drug trafficker, who looked like Santa Claus. He drove his snowplow, following the man's car, the speed increasing with a menacing air. The trafficker saw the vehicle behind about to hit him, but strangely, the snowplow turned at a corner and disappeared. The trafficker didn't understand what was happening and breathed a sigh of relief. But he hadn't gone far when the snowplow suddenly reappeared at the end of the road. Coxman got out of the vehicle, walked to the front of the trafficker's car. He wanted the man to back up his car, otherwise his snowplow couldn't get through. But the trafficker looked at the road, which was clearly very wide. There was no need to back up. The trafficker realized Coxman was deliberately picking a fight. He took out a bill and handed it to him, wanting to settle things peacefully. After all, he had an important shipment in his car that needed to be transported. Of course, Coxman punched the drug trafficker until his nose bled. He himself was panting with exhaustion, but he kept punching the trafficker in the face. He needed to know who was behind all of this, but this trafficker's mouth was much tighter than the two who had died before, refusing to reveal any information and even mocking him. Just when he thought this old man could do nothing more to him, Coxman pulled out the handgun again. He searched the car and found a box full of white powder. Since he couldn't find the mastermind, he wouldn't leave this poison behind. He tore open all the bags and poured the white powder onto the snow, where it blended in with the color of the snow. So, sometimes in Northern Europe, don't just easily put snow in your mouth because you don't know what's mixed in it. And this body was also disposed of in the old way. Coxman had already thrown 3 bodies into the river. So sometimes the river water in Northern Europe may look crystal clear, but you can't drink it directly either. Coxman returned home. The situation at home was even worse. His wife had left, taking all the clothes from the closet. She also left a letter for him on the bed. But when Coxman opened it, it was a blank piece of paper. This blank paper showed that their marital relationship had long been hollowed out by daily habits, leaving only disappointment and an indescribable distance. Coxman drove up to a luxurious villa. It turned out the person living there was his brother, named Brock. He used to be a gangster, so Coxman came here to ask who could be behind his son's murder. While Brock went inside to make a phone call to inquire about the situation, the Thai woman sitting in the living room kept filing her nails, but Coxman felt as if she was cursing him, although he had no proof. Brock finally returned. He had the result. It turned out the drug lord who killed Kyle was a man nicknamed Viking. He controlled the largest drug trafficking gang in the city. Coxman wanted revenge, but Brock thought he couldn't do it. Viking had many henchmen. An ordinary old man like him couldn't get close. He advised Coxman to hire a professional hitman and just wait at home for the news. Moreover, Coxman had already killed 3 of the opponent's men. They must be furious by now. Brock's words were not wrong. At this moment, Viking was in a rage. 3 of his men had disappeared, a kilo of product was also missing, and until now, he still didn't know who did it. Viking, a man prone to overthinking, figured that the person who could take down 3 of his men was definitely no ordinary person. He suddenly thought of the Native American clan, who were always their rivals in the drug trade, and the more he thought about it, the more he believed the other side had done it. This young boss who had just taken power needed to reclaim both his honor and his goods. He immediately sent 2 henchmen to take down the opponent's men and retrieve the product. His 2 henchmen lay in wait at the airport parking lot. When a Native American man got off the plane and got into his car, they followed. They brought this Native American man before Viking. Without much talk, Viking pulled out his gun and shot the man dead. He also ordered the body to be tied to a sign on the snowy mountain. He had no idea that this act had truly angered a group of people. The elders of the Native American clan and their people stood on the opposite hillside. It turned out the Native American man Viking killed was not an ordinary thug, but the chief's own son. From then on, the 2 gangs were at odds with each other, a feud to the death. At this time, Coxman had no idea that he had accidentally started a war between 2 gangs. With his brother's help, he found a hitman in the city. The 2 of them took a taxi together to negotiate the job. They arrived at a shabby motel. Coxman made a deal with the hitman for $90,000. As per custom, he had to pay half the deposit up front. But unexpectedly, The hitman suddenly pulled out a pistol and pressed it to his chin, demanding the deposit be increased to 2/3. With no other choice, Coxman had to pull out another stack of cash and give it to the hitman. The hitman made a firm promise, but as soon as he turned around, he went straight to Viking's house. He got straight to the point, saying that someone had hired him for $90,000 to kill Viking, and moreover, this person was not sent by the Native American clan. Seeing Viking's interest, this hitman made him an offer, telling him to also pay $90,000 to buy the name of the person who hired him. Viking was amused by the greed of this hitman, who eats from both sides. This was the first time he had seen someone dare to name a price in front of him, but as a boss, Viking wasn't bothered by this small amount of money. He told his men to pay up right in front of the hitman. The hitman then said the name. His name was Coxman. Viking immediately thought of the fat guy Brock Coxman, who was also once active in the underworld. But he had no dealings with this person, nor any kind of relationship. He didn't understand why that fat guy would want to kill him. The hitman, seeing that he had made his money, got up to leave, but Viking suddenly called him back. You know what? In this business, trust is very important. Without trust, you can't do business. And if you can't do business, what happens? Hearing this, the hitman understood he couldn't escape. His greed had killed him. Meanwhile, Coxman was still waiting anxiously at home. He went online to check the news about Viking, and the result was that this guy was still alive and well, still living it up and having a great time. Coxman didn't know that not only had he been scammed out of a large sum of money, but he had also caused his own brother's death. In his villa, Brock saw a car stop at the door. When he saw the person in the car was Viking, he knew his end had come. He looked one last time at the Thai woman standing by the window with an affectionate gaze. Then he resolutely got into Viking's car. This cunning-looking man took all the blame for the deaths of the 3 henchmen. He blamed it on a feud from a previous generation between the 2 families without ever mentioning his younger brother's name. He wanted to leave one person to get revenge himself. The enemy was not yet killed, and now another one of his own relatives had died. Coxman and the Thai woman stood before Brock's grave. As he was grieving, unexpectedly the Thai woman standing next to him suddenly spat hard on the grave and then mumbled a curse, pulling her suitcase and walking away. She had to waste her time finding another man. The so-called foreign love was in fact just the same old trick of exchanging bodies for benefits. Coxman stood before the grave for a long time. It seemed some things could only be done by himself. He secretly went to Viking's house, discreetly observing the situation from a distance. It was then that he discovered that Viking had a son who was in elementary school. Perhaps this boy was a breakthrough point. In another development, Viking knew he had mistakenly killed a member of the Native American clan. To avoid a major bloody war, he decided to sue for peace. He thought he had only killed an ordinary thug of the other side, so he mercilessly shot dead a henchman he had long been patient with. He sent someone to bring this henchman's body to the Native American clan as a gift of apology. While he was arranging things, he paid no attention to the extremely grim expression on the face of the bald bodyguard next to him. It turned out that the rather handsome-looking henchman Viking had just killed was a close friend of the bald man. The 2 of them had planned to work for another 2 years and then retire to travel somewhere. It seemed this lifelong dream had gone up in smoke. Viking's henchman brought a large gift box to the territory of the Native American clan. He took out a human head and placed it before the old chief. The henchman relayed Viking's message, saying that he had killed the perpetrator and wanted the 2 sides to restore peace. The old chief told the henchman to come closer as if he had something to whisper. I want a son for a son. The old chief opened fire and killed Viking's messenger. This war was inevitable. In another development, Coxman found Viking's son's school. When school was out, he found the boy and pretended to be his father's subordinate coming to pick him up. The boy saw the old man in a suit didn't look like a bad person, so he followed Coxman into the car. Coxman took the boy home. By now, the boy also knew this man was not one of his father's people, but he was not scared at all. On the contrary, he was curious, because this man did not make him feel threatened or uncomfortable, and was even a bit friendly. At bedtime, Coxman gave his son's room to the boy. He was about to leave when the boy asked him to stay and tell him a fairy tale before bed. Coxman had no choice but to pick up the snowplow's instruction manual and read it to the boy. But unexpectedly, the boy listened intently to such dry, mechanical content. Coxman told him stories for a long time. When he stood up to turn off the light, the boy suddenly leaned into his arms. Perhaps in this man, the boy had felt a fatherly love he had never known. Coxman's heart suddenly felt mixed. His son was dead, but his enemy's son was in his arms. This boy reminded him of his own son when he was little. That child had also cuddled in his arms. A boy just as naive and carefree about the world. What he saw was not the enemy's son, but an innocent child identical to his own. At the same time, Viking was also searching everywhere for his son's whereabouts. He went to the school security guard, and this witness said that the snowplow worker Coxman had taken his son away. It was then that Viking suddenly realized there was another Coxman in the world. This man was the one who truly wanted to take his life. The school security guard demanded $10,000 for providing this important information. Thus, he and the black hitman became good friends. Viking immediately led a large force up the snowy mountain. They went to Coxman's house, but when they broke in, they found it empty. However, Viking found his son's school bag in the house. Clearly, the security guard was not wrong. His son had been kidnapped by Coxman. The bald man found a photo in a drawer. On the snowplow was the name of the parking lot, and the address of the parking lot was on the mountaintop nearby. So Viking led his army on the road again. But he had no idea. Behind his back, the bald man had secretly made a phone call. He informed the Native Americans of the location Viking was heading to. He wanted revenge for his lover, and Coxman was indeed waiting on the mountaintop. He used the scope of his sniper rifle to see Viking's convoy approaching. He knew a big fight was about to break out, so he hurried the boy into the workshop, hiding him in a steel cabinet on the second floor. He himself hid in the secret tunnel beneath the snowplow, waiting for the enemy to arrive. Before long, Viking's convoy arrived at the gate of the parking lot. Hiding under the vehicle, Coxman aimed his gun at the enemy who had killed his son. Just as he was about to take his revenge, a gun was suddenly pressed to his temple. It turned out that Viking's men had circled around to the back door and found him. Coxman was brought before Viking. Here, the two enemies who had never met finally came face to face. While he was interrogating this old man about his son's whereabouts, he had no idea that behind him on the snowy road, a convoy was slowly approaching. The people in the cars had their guns aimed at him. The two major gangs officially opened fire. Seeing the situation was not good, Coxman quickly hid behind a car. The battle in front of the parking lot was extremely fierce. The old chief sat in his car without moving. It was not yet his time to act. When he saw that both sides were almost wiped out, the old chief finally opened the car door. He fired continuously towards Viking, wanting to kill this bastard with his own hands. Meanwhile, Coxman also ran back to the warehouse. He drove his snowplow out, crashing straight into Viking's SUV. Seeing Viking dodge the crash and run towards his Cadillac, Coxman couldn't let him escape so easily. He climbed onto another track tree cutter. Here, the one thing he didn't lack was heavy machinery. He used the tree cutter to chop down a large tree, blocking the path of Viking who was trying to drive away. The tree trunk pierced through the Cadillac. But even so, with a strong will to survive, Viking still tried to drive on. But when he looked ahead, he suddenly froze. A bullet had gone through his chest. The man standing before him was the old chief. He had finally killed the enemy with his own hands. Coxman also walked up to the car. He looked at the dead Viking. From then on, the two old men had finally avenged their sons. Seeing their wish fulfilled, Coxman drove his snowplow again. It was getting dark. He wanted to plow the snow one last time. On the snowy and windy road, a man suddenly climbed into his driver's cabin. It was none other than the old chief. The two of them had no direct grudge. The old chief put his gun down, and just like that, the two of them sat in the snowplow, clearing the way for the convoy behind them. On the snowy mountain, the snow and wind continued to fall. The town returned to its usual quiet, but human greed and violence will never truly disappear. They are just waiting for a loophole to appear to run rampant again. Just like the snow and wind will never stop, the snowplow will have to work forever. All the evil, darkness, and blood will be buried in the white snow time and time again, year after year. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching. What did you think of this movie?